What is going on, YouTube? What is going on, fellow fantasy people? And most importantly, what is going on, the catch fam? You already know what time it is, baby. We are here for the rest of our running back rankings, numbers 13 through 24. It is your boy John with the catch. And of course,
Steven, baby, I'm here.
Steven
I'm
is
watching
here.
over you. It's an important podcast, baby. 13 to 24. We got all black. We're looking like some bouncers at a club. We ready? We ready to support the
Let's
catch
get
fam?
right into it, man. Uh, as always, if you do find this video enjoyable in any way, entertaining and or helpful, please go and smash that like button, as it truly does help us out in the algorithm, and consider subscribing for more future content like this, as well as our annual The Catch podcast, and drop a comment down below on what you think of our rankings. Without further ado, let's hop right into it, baby. So speaking of blackout, at my number 13 ranked running back, maybe a little controversial here.
Definitely with
Maybe
me, it
just a
is.
little. I've
Definitely
got
with me,
Josh
it is.
Jacobs. Yeah. Josh Jacobs. Okay. So, I mean, you see him all over the place in terms of fantasy rankings, right? Anywhere from like that 15 to 18 range up to like
Mhm.
ranked 45 overall. Um,
Yeah.
RB8 last year on average. So I like Josh Jacobs a whole lot, especially as an
hmm
RB2 or RB3 on your roster. And, there's a lot of reasons why I can go over why I like him, but I guess my question is, why don't you like him, and why do so many people not like him? Is it just the addition of Kenyon Drake,
I
or
think yeah.
is there
I think that's
something
a huge
else?
part. Yeah, I think it's a huge part. I mean, this is probably the most hated consistent running back. I think he averaged like 14 points a game last season. I had him. He's been actually on my team the past two seasons. So historically somebody I loved because I always saw him as a high target type of guy who eventually would maybe be like a for sure three down back. For some reason, I mean, I don't think John Gruden's a great coach to start off, but for some reason, John Gruden just doesn't want that. He has always really tried really hard to make Josh Jacobs not a third down back. I favor the PPR very heavily. Kenyon Drake, they didn't just bring him in and they didn't just acquire a running back who can catch out of the backfield. They gave him a bag. And I think Kenyon Drake, I mean, like he is not a terrible running back. He's actually really
Sure,
good.
sure.
There's a situation here where Kenyon Drake starts off as a predominant third down back, never really loses that to Josh Jacobs. I don't think that's ever going to happen. But there's also a chance that he starts eating into first and second down. Josh Jacobs has been really consistent with durability. He's had some, injuries in the past, but I could definitely see John Gruden really trying to maybe make this backfield as close to a 50-50 split as you would want to see.
Okay.
But let's just go away from Kenyon Drake about why I don't necessarily love him. Like the Raiders are not good, and I don't think they will be good next year. I think they have gotten way worse. They basically cut everything about their team that was good, which was on their O line. They have a scrub O line now. And I just, that doesn't help Josh Jacobs. I think now it's like he's running behind a worse team. And I don't know, man. There's just so many narratives for why this could be tough for them. And they've got a really hard schedule against the running backs. They're like the 26th hardest schedule at running backs. There's a pretty good argument for why I think people hate on this guy.
Yeah, I get all that. I guess like for me, I'm just like RB8. I'm gonna
Yeah, I
draft
know.
this. I'm gonna draft this guy.
But
So, and
yeah,
I mean, I think all of those are very valid points, and I understand why people don't like Josh Jacobs, but I do think there should at least be some debate for him being
mhm,
drafted, or at least ranked and drafted a little bit earlier than he's going. And he's never been a good receiving back
yeah.
statistically. So, I mean, I think if anything. Um, the Kenyon Drake addition could help him to some degree. I mean, I definitely still think that it hurts him, right? But I don't know. At the end of the day, this is where I've got him ranked. I'm confident in
Well,
him, and I can move forward with him on my team. And once again, even if he performs poorly, I'll get over it because
you're
I
still
was
going to
confident in him.
see. Yeah, and you're still going to see. I mean, this is his projections are very solid and honestly solid enough to warrant, I think, where you have him ranked.
Sure.
But this is still going to be their overall leader in touches. And I think overall, definitely in the red zone. So I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
if you are a fan of this Raiders offense, or at least think that there's a serious opportunity there for Josh Jacobs, I'm not questioning the talent. I think Josh Jacobs is a hell of a back, and I think
sure.
I cannot wait for him to leave Las Vegas because I think he's a do it all back. But and so I mean, I have him ranked at 20. We'll talk about that when it gets closer.
Sure.
But maybe I am really hard on him, and it's somewhere in the middle, right?
Yeah.
But just I would warrant maybe don't reach for him. But if you do find him in fourth or fifth round, maybe, dude, this is a good top two back, top two, like in that 24 range.
I think you should reach for him. But what a good like handcuff situation to fall into too.
Yeah.
As a side note, is if you can go out and get both of these guys, both Kenyon Drake and Josh Jacobs, that is, I think it's definitely worth looking at. So
Mhm.
let's see at 13 in your rankings, you got your guy Joe Mixon.
Yeah, this guy almost got my top 12, to be honest. I think I'm a lot higher on him than you are. So
Yeah,
this 13 spot's interesting because we probably both don't love our guys here.
sure.
But Joe Mixon, I just think something that really makes it out of the box for why I think this is going to be a good pick is not only is this a first or three down back who's going to see all the touches, going to see absurd amount of carries and targets. This guy's was averaging in the past like 23.8 touches a game. I think it might get even higher. But this is also going to be an more explosive offense with Cincinnati. We're finally seeing Joe Burrow finally in the mix as maybe a every down kind of starter. They've been loading up at receivers, so we're going to see more of an opportunity there. This is going to also be an offense that is constantly trying to fight back at the end of games, which could see even more scoring. I think more scoring than with your guy, Josh Jacobs in Las Vegas. So with all that kind of combined, I just think you're kind of pairing up two of the most important things, which is a lot of scoring opportunity and volume. And I think that's what Joe Mixon offers you. And that's why it's a really good baseline, high floor player in Joe Mixon.
Yeah, and I do like Joe Mixon. I've got him ranked obviously a little bit lower than you do, and just for whatever reason, I have always kind of hated on Joe Mixon, to be completely honest,
Mhm.
from a fantasy standpoint. That is, he's just never a guy that I really want to go out and get. And I mean, I don't think he's a bad running back by any means whatsoever. But still, when you kind of look at his stats, uh, I mean, they're not bad, right? But he's still kind of, when healthy, around 1,100 rushing yards, 5 to 8 touchdowns, and like 1 to 3 receiving touchdowns. So those are very good stats for where you can draft him, if he repeats those performances. But they're, not really elite by any means.
Yeah.
But then again, they're not that different of that of Josh Jacobs. So
Yeah.
I completely understand the argument, and it's just one of those weird personal vendetta things where he's just not a guy that I feel fully confident in. But I think you
He's
make great.
burned he's burned a lot of people in the past.
Yeah, and I think you make great, arguments, and I certainly think that the Cincinnati Bengals are going to take a step forward offensively. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, I don't hate the pick. I've just got him, a couple spots lower, and that's probably just me being a weirdo. So here at the 14th ranked running back, we do have an agreement on that of Clyde Edwards-Elaire,
Mm-hmm.
who I
Yeah.
think obviously a lot of people were expecting to come out and have, like an Ezekiel Elliott type year, a rookie season where he's
Mm-hmm.
just absolutely lights out. Obviously dealt with some injuries last year and all of that. So I do think that people are kind of expecting him to really take a big step forward.
Yeah.
I think my hesitancy, and he really only missed like 1.5 game or 3.5 games last year, which is enough missed games, and definitely missed time at the wrong point in the season to have him from a fantasy perspective, missing the last 2 games of the season. But I think my initial hesitancy. I mean, this is still someone that I want to go out and get, but there's two
Yeah, for
ways.
sure.
There's two ways to look at this, in my opinion, right? The part that draws hesitancy for me is there's so much firepower in that offense, and it's based on the passing game. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the fantasy points are geared towards Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelsey and whoever the hell Patrick Mahomes feels like throwing to at the moment, right? But then the counter argument to that is, well, that absolutely helps Clyde Edwards-Helaire as a running back be in a prime position to score more points on a regular basis. So I get both sides of it, but I just have him ranked, where you have him ranked at 14, and I think it's a good place for him. And I certainly am not saying that you shouldn't go out and target this guy. I do think he's going to have a good year, over 1,000 rushing yards and somewhere between like 6 and 8 touchdowns. So
Yeah, no. Here's the thing. I think we're both really high on Clyde. I actually have identified him as like maybe my best breakout player at the position, because I think this is his time to have that second year breakout type of spot. He's going to see so much positive progression in terms of touchdowns. This guy had like no touchdowns for the workload that he got in the red zone. And you could be like, oh, dude, that's all his fault. I'm just not of that mind. I don't think that was all his fault. I think it was just, fluke chance. Stuff happens. Like, I think that's kind of the case that happened there. But I also think, like you're saying, like being a part of this explosive offense, it's a double-edged sword. It's very good because you see a lot more opportunities that can be productive. But it's also like there's a lot of places the ball could go.
Sure.
My idea is this. I think that the Chiefs actually are going to change the game a little bit in how they kind of attack the season. I think they actually focus a little bit more on the run game than they have in the past seasons because, dude, we've seen Patrick Mahomes take some pretty serious shots, get hurt a little bit recently, and that is terrifying to the like $500 million contract they gave him. So Why would you do that? Why would you like put him in so much risk during the regular season? Let's give it to a guy that we drafted with serious draft capital that Andy Reid identified as the next Brian Westbrook. Like, this guy can do it out of the backfield. He can catch the ball. He can run the ball. He can do it all. He is a 3-down back. And you pair him in the Chiefs offense, he has all the recipe to be that first round type of talent, which is what everybody saw him at when he came out of LSU. What he's not going to give you is he's not going to give you those 70-yard rushing touchdowns. But what he is going to give you is a hell of a lot of consistency, I believe, this year. And he's also going to be a guy, I think, that we could see in all of your drafts. You might get a chance to take this guy in the third round. Him and David Montgomery are like the exact player I want to have in the third round.
I agree. Yeah. Our 15th ranked running backs overall. I've got Austin Ekeler. So we did already touch on him as a player in our last episode and kind of our standpoints. And then you've got David Montgomery. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add about David Montgomery, but we did touch on him because he is my RB12. But anything you want to add until we move on to our 16th ranked players here?
No, I mean, basically just want to double down on what we said in the top 12 rankings. I think this is a guy that we definitely see as being a great value add, especially where he's going currently. And I don't really see that changing prior to your drafts happening. But here's the deal. Like, I just don't see his floor bottoming out past like where he's currently being drafted. And I think the ceiling is similar to where you had him, which is like that top 12. So this is a very consistent back that should be implemented into your strategies if you get the chance.
So ranked at the 16th overall running back, I've got Chris Carson, someone who you've got a little bit lower, but I feel pretty confident in Chris Carson. I mean, the main issue here is obviously the injuries, and then kind of, I had him on my fantasy roster last year, and towards the end of the season, he just kind of had a little bit of a fall off, but we really saw him perform, well early on. And I think once again, this has to do, at least for me, in my belief that the Seattle Seahawks are going to be a very good offense this year. And as long as Chris Carson can stay healthy, he's going to, obviously have a lot of the stake in that offense as well. But I will say in a lot of like the mock drafts that I'm doing, when Chris Carson is available and some of these other backs in the same tier are there, part of me is just beginning to slowly select those other running backs.
Yeah.
And that's probably due to, those injury concerns and the fact that I had him on my team last year. I don't want to say he let me down. He got me, into the playoffs and everything. But come playoff, fantasy playoff time, he definitely let me down. And with some of those injuries, there's definitely a big concern as well. So, but I feel pretty confident that he can come out and have a fully healthy year. And I think if he does, he at least presents an elite value in terms of touchdowns. I mean, he is definitely,
Yeah,
it
that's for
seems
sure.
when they get in the red zone, like they just want to give the ball to Chris Carson. So I certainly hope that he is healthy this year. And if he is, I think he's going to have a great year and he warrants that 16th overall spot for my rankings at least.
Yeah, I mean, dude, it's weird because I started off really high on Chris Carson because you hear like all this Seahawks, man, all they want to do is run the ball. That's what happened with all this beef with Russell Wilson. They were like, no, we're going to fire our OC because we didn't run it enough. We need Chris Carson to be a big part of our team. We're going to give him the contract to help him stay on with us. Like there was so much investment at the running back mindset, running back philosophy that I don't think if you're a fantasy owner, you want to overlook because I do think that is going to be a big part of the narrative with these Seahawks is they're going to run the ball a lot. But with that said, too, is something that scares me about the Seahawks in general is there's a general theme that follows all of these guys on the Seahawks, except for maybe DK Metcalf. Consistency. Nobody seems to be able to bring consistency week to week. And that's, I
Sure.
think, what we're also going to see with Chris Carson. Outside of that touchdown, maybe where he is probably one of those like top 5 backs in rushing touchdowns, just because he is going to probably see bulk of that red zone. I'm not too sure I can really bank on this guy. And that's why like the main situations where I'm maybe trying to draft him is if he falls to like the 4th round. But I damn sure don't want him to be like my number 1 or my number 2 back. Like
Sure.
that would scare me because I don't think he can lead my team week to week. But with that said, I mean, another maybe con of coming up with is Rashaan Penny. This is a
Yeah.
guy who is extremely talented. And dude, I mean, everybody just seems to be slowly talking about Rashaan Penny. He's finally healthy. He is probably the more talented running back. I don't know if you like go out and draft a guy or anything. I'm not saying that,
I've
but I think
talked
he,
Yeah, I've
yeah,
touched on that in mock drafts. Like I think Rashad Penny is definitely, and especially in deeper leagues, worth a draft pick and just at least stashing for now. So
but he's definitely scary if you're a Chris Carson owner because it's
yeah,
like this guy's going to be eating up your touches,
absolutely.
and you also have to understand that like there is a world as well where Russell Wilson made such a fuss about the fact that he wants to throw it more, and they're changing it up too. Apparently, they have been focusing a lot more on tempo. So shorter passes, quicker passes, getting the ball out of Russell Wilson's hands faster. So I don't know. Maybe do they try to kind of speed up the offense, which is less of like that run right down the middle and then bomb it deep. So this is a murky situation, which I think is going to churn out a running back that is probably so-so, right? But that's the range that we're getting into now with that 12 to 24 as well.
Yeah, and I think with a lot of these backs, it has to do more with your faith in their respective
Mm-hmm.
offenses, bringing us to your 16th ranked running back, and that of Daryl Henderson.
Yeah, baby. Daryl Henderson, dude. What in the world, man? I don't even know how to feel about this guy, even though I do think he's got great upside. He's got crazy upside, actually.
Yeah.
I'd say probably some of the best at where he's being ranked right now. Just because, dude, he is on a filthy offense who I think maybe could be the number 1 offense in the league next year. But he's the RB1, and who the hell is competing with him? Jake Funk?
Yeah.
I mean, come on now. I mean, cool name and all, but like, I don't know. I think Daryl Henderson can easily be like that guy that ends up just like, you know how Cam Akers came in for you last year? And it
Yep.
was like, holy shit, like, bro, I'm untouchable now. Now I got Cam Akers, and he's like my RB3 or 4. It's like, if you can get Daryl Henderson to be that, that is like going to set your team above everybody else's so easily. But here's the catch 22. Can we can we rely on Daryl Henderson to be healthy? He's never done it in his whole
Sure.
career. And
Sure.
the Rams are afraid of it. They are terrified of him being healthy or not. So you are basically taking the shot on health. Because if he's healthy, this guy's a top 12 back, in my opinion.
Yeah,
But I
he had some very good games last year as well. But
think he had a
yeah,
higher yards per carry than Cam Akers did,
yeah,
actually. I mean, this guy's
yeah.
talented.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly. I mean, I just have him a couple spots lower than you, but I certainly understand why you have him ranked where you do, and he's someone who in more and more mock drafts, I'm starting to pick up as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
moving on to our 17th ranked players, I've got Joe Mixon, so nothing to really touch on there as we already sank into some bait on our guy Joe, at least your guy Joe, right?
Yeah.
So let's move on to your 17th ranked player, and that of J.K. Dobbins, someone who I have maybe controversially ranked a lot lower than you, but I'll let you
Yeah.
crack down on our boy J.K. for a little here.
Yeah, man. I think this is another guy too. Actually, this was my favorite running back coming out of the draft. I thought this guy was just super good. Coming out of Ohio State, so overall well balanced. I compared him to Zeke Elliott. Maybe that's a little bit of a bad analysis or a bad comp, but I just thought this guy could do it all. And unfortunately, he's drafted to the Ravens, who, dog, you're just not getting the ball at running back out of the passing game, which is like my biggest concern with him because I've touched on it so many times in this running back rankings. PPR and receptions is huge. Thing is, Lamar Jackson is not going to do that. And he's very capable. J.K. Dobbins is capable of catching and could be a monster there. But Lamar is always going to run the ball when the option or alternative is dumping it off. So we see kind of like a cap there. But you also got Gus Edwards trying to eat into those. They gave him the bag too. So what you're really seeing is like, okay, well, J.K. Dobbins has a cap on him, right? So his true ceiling, I don't think is ever going to be reached with the Ravens. And the other thing too is he's kind of got regression going against him. He had like some pretty absurd statistics last year in terms of like his touches to touchdowns percentage. I mean, it was pretty nuts being a fantasy owner of him last year because it was just like, yeah, if he didn't score, like this guy was terrible, but every week he was scoring a touchdown. I'm not too sure that happens again, but if he does, it does. It's regression. It's betting on the guy's talent.
I think you touched on everything that I wanted to touch on, and those are the exact reasons why I don't think J.K. Dobbins will ever be a top 20 fantasy running back,
Mm-hmm.
especially the points of Lamar Jackson is your quarterback, and
Yeah,
Gus Edwards is a heavily used running back in that same offense. And
yeah,
I completely agree. I think his ceiling is as high as it gets. I think he could be a 1,500 rushing yard running
yeah,
back who has 10 plus touchdowns. Who even cares about the receiving game with him, right? But I just don't think in this offense it's going to happen. And that's why I have him ranked a little bit lower and why he's a stay away for me, because I certainly think the talent's there. I certainly think he's a valuable running back at some point in the draft. You should start targeting
yeah,
him, and he's definitely warranted, with a draft selection being the RB1 in that offense. But you could argue that he's actually the RB2, and then you could argue whether he's the RB1 or RB2 that Gus Edwards still eats into those carries. So, and you're absolutely right. If he didn't score those touchdowns last year, it'd be a very scary player to own fantasy wise. So that's why I have him ranked lower than where you have him, and I'm glad you touched on all those points because it basically
yeah.
covers everything that I wanted to go over. So
But I don't want to just beat him up. I mean, I do
no,
think
no, no,
that
yeah,
he's gonna have I think, improved season next year. And I think a lot of the fantasy hype about him is due warranted.
sure.
Because the thing about it is the Ravens do understand at a core that they need to evolve their offense. And Lamar Jackson cannot do everything for them long term. And
Sure.
so I think they will identify J.K. Dobbins as being one of the highest talented players on their team, and they will start feeding him the ball more.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think it's all those are all valid points, and yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with you. It's just a little bit
Mhm.
of a stay away for me. So,
For
with
sure.
your 18th ranked player, you've got Chris Carson, who we've already touched on here, as I have him ranked a little bit higher. But then, vice versa, at my 18th overall player, I've got that of Miles Sanders, who you've got ranked a little bit lower than I do. And for me, with Miles Sanders, I definitely understand why you have him ranked where you have him, and I don't even necessarily disagree. I, for whatever reason, just feel like I want Miles Sanders. Like I don't know. I feel like Philly's going to run the ball a lot. I feel like with Jalen Hurts coming out in the sophomore campaign, that Miles Sanders could be a big part of that. I mean, we did our NFC East preview podcast where we already kind of talked about this topic, but I just think when you're starting to look at some of these other running backs that he is more favored to be have a heavier workload than some of these other guys. So I have him at 18. I don't necessarily have a great argument for why he's there. I just feel like he might end up being one of those guys that people pass on and they end up regretting it. But I could certainly see that go the other way to where a lot of people kind of pass on him and it turns out to be the right decision. So just kind of one of those weird things, right? And I always talk about this: trust your instinct, trust your
Mhm.
gut, and just kind of go with it sometimes because your guess is as good as mine at the end of the day with fantasy. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think for Miles Sanders, it's actually I would have the like opposite argument. I think one of his biggest things going against him now is that the Eagles have been bringing in more and more people to the carousel running backs that they have. That I think his workload is just going to be eaten away, especially with
sure.
how incompetent he has been proven to be in the receiving game. And this is like, yeah, their O line is good. I think they're going to be a decent offense, but this is not a good offense, and we can't expect it to be. And it, there's a lot of a storm going on, which is why I have him ranked at 21. I really don't like Miles Sanders. I think the biggest argument for Miles Sanders for me is that I do think he's a really talented running back on first and second down. He's almost like a little bit downgraded of a talent wise of a Josh Jacobs for me, which is why I kind of have them very similar in terms of rankings. But I think the biggest thing for Miles Sanders next year is, can he prove early on in the season, I can do it on third down? Can I pass block for Jalen Hurts? Can I catch the dump offs from Jalen Hurts? Because if he can do that, he can and will be a top 15 back in my
Sure.
mind.
Sure.
And that's the difference. And I think he does have some of the richest natural talent out of that position group that we're now in the rankings of like 17 onwards. This
Yeah.
is one of the most talented guys left. And
Sure.
they drafted him high. They took a second round draft pick on this guy. And at a certain point, as an organization, you want to see if this guy can really do it. And his contract is getting closer and closer to an end.
Yeah. Yep. I think you sum it up great. I mean, like I said, I don't have a great argument here. It's just kind of where I view him right now,
Yeah.
and that could certainly change come closer to week one. So, at our 19th ranked overall players, I've got our boy Daryl Henderson.
Yeah,
So
baby.
we'll move on as we've already gone over big D. I feel like Big D
We need a
Henderson,
nickname.
man.
We need a nickname for him next
Yeah,
year,
D
man. Because this
Hendy,
guy's gonna be a stud, bro. I
D
hope so.
Tendies, baby.
Or else I'm gonna look stupid because I'm drafting him in anything I can get.
So you've got Deandre Swift, who I'll go
Mhm.
at your 19th ranked player. I'll go
Yeah.
ahead and put it out there. I don't have him ranked in my top 24.
Whoa, man. Really?
And I'll let you touch on him. I hate the Lions, and I want no part of
Yeah.
drafting any
I
Lions
can't hate you
players.
for that, man.
No knock on DeAndre Swift. I certainly think he's talented. I see why he's ranked where he is, and
Mhm.
honestly, I'd probably have him ranked at like 25 overall. But stay away from me. I mean, don't get me wrong, RB 18 last year, so plenty of reason to rank him within the top 24. But and hey, he did miss some games last year too, right? So certainly reason to have him ranked in your top 20. But I don't want any part of the Lions, so that's my argument, and that's all I got. So
I don't have any beef with you not wanting a part of this Lions offense. I just think when you look at DeAndre Swift, I mean, he was running back 18, and we talk so much about like positive regression and stuff. He was running back 18, all right, but he had only had 100 carries. Like that is like serious efficiency, and
sure,
that's because this guy is so good, and he's also really good as a pass catcher.
sure,
Now, like my biggest beef is like this team sucks. Their schedule against rushing is 31st in the league. So that's a pretty damn hard schedule. And they've also got somebody that we are both in love with, Jamal Williams, as a backup running back, who I think is going to be a serious competition for third down, even though DeAndre Swift is really good.
yeah,
I just think Jamal Williams is a vet and he brings a different presence. Apparently, also, there's been murmurs that he might be the red zone guy. So there is a little bit of cap. And so like it is a little bit of more of an argument of like what hurts DeAndre Swift. But I think that's why I have him relatively low. Because I think if he didn't have some of those things and there wasn't such a stench of this shitty Detroit Lions team, he would be very high and maybe a top 12 back. Um, but with all the narrative and with all the circumstances going on with this guy, I do think DeAndre Swift is going to see a lot of touches. Dan Campbell wants to beat the shit out of
Motor
teams.
City Campbell.
Dude, he's drinking 8 espressos and he's ready to go kick somebody's ass.
Oh yeah.
And what I mean, they are building this team in the trenches. So I see
Sure.
DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams kind of leading this organization, leading this team.
I mean, I think you make a fair argument. I think everything you went over is great, but at the same time, to that very point, it's like, yeah, they're building this team from the ground up, and their O line is nothing to
It's
sneeze at.
good. It's
So
good, bro.
that actually just raised my personal stock in DeAndre Swift, just thinking about that O line just slightly. And I think to that point of Jared Goff is like he does kind of lean on the run game. We've always seen
Mhm.
him have a very capable running back, and when he performed better overall was when Todd Gurley was the best back in the league. So,
Yeah.
hey, I could be completely wrong on this one.
DeAndre Swift from Georgia too, man. Maybe a little
Yeah,
bit of a circumstance. I might be
yeah,
reaching there, but I think he's got
yeah,
the talent to be really good.
yeah. I don't I understand why he's there, but like I said, for me, it's a stay away. So that's
Yeah.
just where
I
I'm
mean,
at right
who you
now.
gonna trust? You gonna trust a guy who ranks Josh Jacobs 13? I wouldn't. I wouldn't
So
do it.
speaking of Josh Jacobs, you've got him ranked as your 20th RB. So we've already
Yeah.
gone over guy I'm a lot higher on, and that of Josh Jacobs. Speaking of guys that I'm a lot higher on than you, Ronald Jones the second, baby, my 20th overall running back. Hey, I don't get this one either, man. I don't get it.
Yeah, he's
I
good,
get it.
man.
I get it, but I don't get it. This one I get the most out of the ones that I don't get. You know what I'm saying?
Dude,
So
it's a frustrating fucking backfield, man. I hate
yeah.
this backfield sometimes.
I
Dude.
mean, if you guys been keeping up with our mock drafts, like I feel like I draft him in every mock draft I
Mhm.
do, but the value you just can't deny. I mean, he only missed 2 games last year, right? And he was
Mhm.
still RB 16 last year. So I understand that at the latter of the season for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we saw Leonard Fournette really start to be the guy in that offense, and I drafted Leonard Fournette last year. I held on to Leonard Fournette all year until he was actually productive, and I dropped him. And our boy Ben, shout out Ben, picked him up. But that's usually how things go for me, right? But I just have this feeling. We talked about this in our NFC South podcast, right? Where I just think during the regular season, once again, it's going to be Ronald Jones, but it could certainly
Mhm.
be that of Leonard Fournette. But at the moment, I want as many pieces of that Tampa Bay Buccaneers
Yeah.
offense as possible. And even if he is half as productive as he was last year, and Leonard Fournette eats into that offense as well, I just want pieces of that offense at every position on my fantasy roster because I think they're going to have a lights out year. And I'm super high on Ronald Jones. So throw me some shade in the comments down below. I don't really care. Once again, I just go for guys that I am confident in.
Yeah.
And if I like the name and I've done my due diligence, then they're going to be on my fantasy roster. And that's just where I'm at.
Yeah, man, I got no knock on that, but I don't have him even in my top 24.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is the way I envision this Tampa Bay offense going next year in their running back position group is between the 20s. So outside the red zone, we're going to see Ronald Jones on first and second down. On third down, we're going to see Giovanni Bernard. And I think he's going to be used like James White was. And that's big stash guy. Big stash guy.
Yeah.
Now in the red zone between the 20s, that's where Leonard Fournette is going to eat. I think he's going to lead the team in touches out of the running back position. It sucks though, right? I just laid out how I think this is going to go. That sucks so much to me because I do like Ronald Jones. This guy was a stud at USC. He's a stud in the NFL. Like he's never going to get his shot with Tampa. And I just want him to go somewhere else. He's a very similar back to like Josh Jacobs. Like I want him to get his shine and he's going to get his shine on. It's just going to be with a different team. He might get a couple Super Bowls before he leaves, but he's never going to get that individual stats with Bruce Arians. And Leonard Fournette, part of him coming back was I want to see touches of a starter. I want to be that guy.
Sure.
I don't think he's going to get that, but I do think he's going to see all the red zone bucks.
Sure. Yeah, and I'll just say, someone goes out and gets Ronald Jones before you, go draft Leonard Fournette because why not? So that's kind of where I stand on that
Yeah.
backfield. So let's move on to our 21st ranked running backs. We've already touched on both of them. I've got J.K. Dobbins here. Like I said, I don't see him being a top 20 back, but just right outside the lines at the moment for me. And then you've got Miles Sanders,
Mm-hmm.
ranked 21 overall. And so we will go ahead and move on to our 22nd ranked running backs who we do not agree on. I have got
Yeah.
Mike Davis here, and you have got Miles Gaskin here. So I
Yeah.
will go ahead and hop into Mike Davis, who is a really interesting running back in terms of fantasy because it's like it was that Carolina Panthers offense just favorable to to the running back, or can this guy come out and repeat what he did last year, knowing he's the RB1? We touched a little bit on this, when we went over the NFC South, right? Um, but as much as like I have been taking Mike Davis in mock drafts, and the value of where you can get him, knowing that he's going to be the RB1, kind of similar to Daryl Henderson, where uh, who's competing with him? You know what I'm saying? So um,
Mm-hmm.
I can certainly understand wanting to pass on him. And it seems like more recently I've started to pass on him, right? But if this is your RB4 or your RB5, he is a tremendous value, right? And even if he just does what he did last year in fantasy, which it wasn't even that great overall, with just under 700 rushing yards and 6 rushing touchdowns, and only under 400 rushing yards and 400 receiving yards into receiving touchdowns. So it's a difficult running back to evaluate, and I don't hate where you have him ranked.
It's
I mean,
right after.
yeah,
It's
you've
right
got him ranked
after.
23rd. So I mean, it's like I don't know. If you pick, the next two guys we go over are someone on the outer limits, someone like a Ronald Jones or Leonard Fournette or James Robinson for,
Mm-hmm.
you know, uh, I won't blame you. Like I understand. So I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
Yeah, no, I mean, here's the thing about Mike Davis. I mean, like, this is a guy that I think has the talent. He's almost of an uglier name than David Montgomery is, which is pretty hard. But the thing is about Mike Davis is just the fact that he can do it on all three downs. He can catch. He proved that in Carolina. He can run it. He proved that in Carolina. He proved that in Chicago. He proved that on all the teams he's ever been on. So the one thing he hasn't proved is that he can do it the whole season, but he's going to get that chance with Arthur Smith and the Falcons. And I think Arthur Smith is going to bring that. We need a running back who can do it on all three downs. He wanted that with Derrick Henry. He tried to get that with Derrick Henry, and he was damn effective. And I think with Mike Davis, obviously a massive downgrade in terms of the player. But from all I've heard, I mean, they're going to really try to hammer in Mike Davis here.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to get like serious touches, serious volume. And you're getting him in what, like the 6th, 7th round at times. I mean, like you could build your team in so many ways and just get a number one back with
Yeah.
little competition. I mean, that's just something that when you're building your draft strategy, you need to know that he's there, and you can always rely on Mike Davis to be there.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but shifting gears over to the guy I have ahead of him at
Yeah.
spot 22, Myles Gaskin. I love this guy. Maybe my rankings don't really scream love, but like Myles Gaskin is on this Dolphins team who I know you're in love with. I
But
know
say,
Tua.
I think
Tua
I know
guy.
why you love this guys because
Yeah,
Tua's
yeah.
his quarterback,
Bro,
man.
but Tua is actually part of this. Like Tua, like
Yeah.
he loves to dump the ball off, and I think that is paired perfectly with a guy Myles Gaskin who has been a proven pass catcher. He's got really good talent at catching the ball, and I think that's going to uptick more next season because he's now going to be the back. He's going to be the guy, and so you're going to see more attempts to him. Now, I
Sure.
also think he has positive touchdown regression too. I think he only had like 4 TDs last year. I think if he really is the number one running back, which by all accounts at a training camp, at a preseason, he is that number one guy. I just don't see how it stays at 4. And I also see his
Sure.
yards going up. I think this guy's really talented. And his biggest competition, at least in my mind, is Salvik Ahmed, who's also really good, but he's kind of more of a shifty, fast, smaller back. And I think Myles Gaskin is going to be a guy who can do it on all 3 downs. And Salvik Ahmed will be more of a spelling him out back. So I mean, I would like to get your gauge on him because the thing about it is I know you're so plugged in with Miami. You love this offense. You love Tua. I got to imagine you do
Tua
understand.
time.
Yeah, and I gotta imagine you recognize the fact that Tua is going to look to him and he's going to dump the ball up to him.
Yeah, I like Miles Gaskin a lot. I've got him ranked 24, and I just think for me personally, as much as I like or as much as I anticipate this offense improving this year, as much as I have a weird obsession with Tua, um, I think for me personally, it's the unknown of Miles Gaskin, like the injuries, the missed games. I'm just not completely sold. And, a bulk of his fantasy points last year came in the same game, right?
Mhm.
And then other than that, he had a couple touchdowns sprinkled around that kind of elevated some of those other weeks. He definitely has to score more this year.
Hey, let me tell you
That
this though: fourth easiest schedule again for running backs.
Yeah,
That's pretty good.
it's a great point. It's a fantastic
Mm-hmm.
point. Yeah, and I mean, I certainly think he is going to have a good year overall. I certainly think he is going to see better numbers than what we saw last year, barring any injuries. And if he was fully healthy last year, he probably would have rushed for over 1,000 rushing yards. Uh, I mean, when you really look at how many games he played, being just under 400 receiving yards is really not all that bad. The main
Mm-hmm.
concern here is the touchdowns. He has got to score more touchdowns, whether you play
Yeah.
standard or PPR scoring format. You want this guy to score more touchdowns. And I mean, if anything, Tua's going to take such a big leap this year and be like a Kyler Murray in the red zone and take all
Oh
those.
yeah. I was thinking Patrick Mahomes. You weren't thinking Patrick Mahomes?
All right, let's
No,
move
no.
on.
Peyton Manning.
Well, I certainly think Miles Gaskin's going to have a good year. I just, for me, there's just a little bit of hesitancy, but I will, emphasize the fact that where you can draft him, he is a tremendous value. It
Yeah.
should not be underplayed. Where he is currently going in mock drafts and in rankings in general. He is definitely a fantastic RB3 and a tremendous RB4 or 5 for your fantasy
Oh my gosh,
roster.
yeah.
So.
That'd be amazing.
Um, yeah, I like Miles Gaskin a lot, but I also like the Miami Dolphins a lot. So let's progress here and let's move along. So actually, we're taking a step back. My 23rd ranked player is that of Damien Harris of the New England Patriots, someone who you don't even have in your top rankings, your top 24
Mm-hmm.
rankings. So Damien Harris, another guy, like kind of similar to how we're evaluating almost Miles Gaskin or Mike Davis, right? Uh, I just think it's a safe pick.
Yeah.
I mean, he's still young. He, once again, I mean, like, excuse me, Miles Gaskin, I mean, he missed some time last year, relatively inconsistent. Bill Belichick, just being the crazy genius
Flip the
fantasy
board.
football
Yeah.
running back destroyer that he is.
Yeah.
That's probably the main reason to stay away from him. But I just think it's a safe pick. I think if he's
Yeah.
healthy all season, he should be the RB1, and he should garner all the RB1 benefits for the New England Patriots. But
Mm-hmm.
I will mention one thing. I've gone over this in mock drafts. If Cam Newton's the starter, that hurts Damien Harris. 12
Yeah.
rushing touchdowns by Cam last year. But I think mid-season and later on in the season, as long as Damien Harris is healthy, I personally see Mac Jones starting this season.
Yes.
Sometime in the second half of the season, and I think that's going to help Damien Harris.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they will certainly be handing the ball off more to Damien Harris as long as he's healthy if Mac Jones is the starter. So I think for the second half of the fantasy year, he is going to be a player to have on your bench and someone you can get as a RB4 or RB5.
Yeah.
And kind of stash and just kind of, I think it's a safe selection. So I like him where I've got him ranked at the moment.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll definitely double down on that. And if you go take a look at the AFC video we did, we really drill into this running back core and the combination of how Cam Newton and Mac Jones kind of affect that, which really touches on the point you were just making there. But I mean, bottom line, my analysis of Damien Harris is I love him too. He's actually right outside my top 24, probably 25. And I think that the ceiling is really high for him. My biggest concern would just be James White is still lurking as well. So He
sure.
might see a little
But
limited touches there, but this guy that could easily see a lot of rushing touchdowns.
James White saw, a lot of his value tank with Tom
Oh
Brady not
yeah,
being there. I mean, it's like Tom
yeah,
Brady and him had an amazing chemistry that we did not see last year. But I think, excuse me, James White is a fantastic player, so I'm not going to downplay that too much. But
hmm
uh, yeah, it's just it's one of those running backs at this point and at this tier that it's just kind of hard to evaluate. And I don't necessarily. There's a lot of points that I don't agree or disagree with. It's just kind of where I have him. So
yeah.
you've got Mike Davis ranked 23rd overall, who we've already touched on. So let's cap this out because I have got Myles Gaskin ranked 24 overall, who we already touched on, and then you've got who some people say is the dumbest selection in fantasy football this year, and then who some people say is the best later round value, and that of Kareem Hunt, ranked as your 24th running back overall. I know you're huge on Kareem, so I will let you dive into that a bit. And I would
Dude,
say that I've got him ranked right outside my top 24, so I don't have anything negative to say about him. But
yeah.
I'll let you go. Yeah.
This guy is, in my opinion, top 12 talent. Fact is, though, is he's paired with Nick Chubb, who is probably a top 5 talent. So it's like, you're never going to get the best out of Kareem Hunt. You're never going to get pure volume out of Kareem Hunt. But this is the for sure third down back in the Cleveland offense, who is extremely explosive. We've already talked about it in our top 12 rankings, how good this damn offense is. But, they also have the 6th easiest schedule for running backs. And we're going to see Baker Mayfield want to dump it off a lot too. Kareem Hunt's eaten it up every single game he's been with Cleveland, regardless if Nick Chubb shines or not. I mean, this is just a stud player, and you're getting him at such great value so late in your drafts. If you're in a half PPR, like this is a guy whose like stock is so undervalued and so attractive to me. Now, if you're standard, I understand the hesitancy. I understand why you maybe skewed away from it because most of the value he does bring is in the reception game. But, when you're looking at him, there's also always the chance of injury to Nick Chubb. And if Kareem Hunt steps in and is the true RB1 and RB2 for this team, we could start seeing what he did in Kansas City, which is a top 10 running back. So all
Well,
that
hey,
said,
I'll put this out there. RB10 last year. And the way I evaluate a lot of these guys, it doesn't make sense for me not to have Kareem Hunt in my top 24.
yeah,
So I'll call myself out on that. And I think you make all the right points. I guess for me, I just don't, all the other guys that we've named for the most part, I mean, outside of like maybe a Chris Carson or a J.K. Dobbins, I mean, you could debate with some of these other
they're
guys
pure
too.
RB1s.
Sure, sure. And that's where I have the hesitancy. And it's also, like I said, I don't want to bank on Nick Chubb getting hurt. But really, when you break down Kareem Hunt's stats from last year, he performed well in games Nick Chubb did play in. So,
Yeah,
I certainly 100% understand why he's in your top 24. He just barely slithered out of mine. I had him in there
yeah.
at a point, and but once again, I'm calling myself out. This guy was RB10 last year, so
Mhm.
and there's a tremendous amount of hate and regards to Kareem Hunt as a fantasy player this year that I don't agree with. Like I said, he's just barely out of my top 24. So
Yeah, and I think you would still also recommend him as well in a half PPR league, especially if you're favoring wide receivers. And when we're looking at that 13 to 24 rankings that we all just went through, these are guys that can be your RB1 or RB2 if you are favoring the wide receiver or you take a Travis Kelce in the first round. So that's what we're really trying to point out. And I think that's what we were laying out to you all is that there's still value 13 to 24 and shit, even 25 onwards, as Kareem Hunt just slipped out for you. Damien Harris just slipped out for me. Bottom line is there's a ton of talent at running back this year, and that's something to be excited about.
yeah, and we might even have to do another video just touching on some of the other
Yeah.
guys because there's a lot of good depth still left at the running
Chase
back.
Edmonds,
Yeah, I
Chase
was about to say
Edmonds.
the Arizona
Yeah.
backfield's very good. Jacksonville's backfield's going to
Yeah,
have someone
Travis
come out.
Etienne
San
is a fan beast.
Francisco's backfield. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of players left to continue evaluating. But nonetheless, that's our top 24, baby. That was 13 through
Hmm.
24. That was a blast, man. Running
Yeah,
back position. I don't think we can begin to de-stress how much we believe in the running back
it's
position,
critical.
which is essentially at this point amongst fantasy fanatics, right?
Yeah.
I don't think anyone really disagrees with that, but there are people out there who do want a wide receiver one or a quarterback early, but hey, running back position, man, it's where it's at.
Yeah, I mean, it
Yeah.
is. And I think more and more data, more and more research has come out to kind of back the fact that running backs are kind
And
of
it's just
the
then
most value the first 2 rounds.
yeah, it just thins out quicker than any other
Yeah.
position, right? So,
Yeah.
certainly hope this was helpful to each and every one of you. If you did enjoy this video, we do kindly ask that you go ahead and smash that like button, as it truly
Hmm.
does help give us a boost in the algorithm. And please consider subscribing to the channel for more future content like this, as well as our annual The Catch podcast. Make
Okay.
sure to go ahead and trash Steven for his RB rankings in the comments down below as well. And yeah, that's all I've got. We thank you very much for listening and or watching. Steven, I'll let you get any final thoughts in as well.
I think my biggest thing that I want to leave here with is who are the guys that you guys think we left off the list? Who is your, guy that we are sleeping on? That's something that we would want to know also for our drafts as well, but also just for advice. I'm sure there's some people out there that are huge Chase Edmonds fans, for instance. So please tell us. We'd be happy to take a dig into those as well. We're going to release another video in the future that's talking about guys that are outside that top 24. So if, we start hearing a bunch of news about a certain player, we will make sure to dive into those guys.
As always, we thank you guys so much for listening and or watching. And remember, you saw it here on The Catch.